Hi, my name is David Sackett, and my main role these days is working with growth farms. I guess the majority of our farms tend to be in medium to high rainfall areas, and so our mixed farms, we tend to sort of prefer to stay a little bit east rather than west, because we just believe rainfall is so important. So what do we look for when we go looking for a farm for a client? We look at some of the key issues of getting the scale right. So we want to have a viable economic unit, and that's sort of maybe 20,000 DSCs of sheep, maybe 2,000 to 3,000, 4,000 hectares of crop. And that might sound large, but what that does is allow us to structure it to get our labour efficiency right, to get our machinery right. If you're 600 mil plus, you can get 10 to 12 DSC to the hectare. That actually makes it quite competitive with cropping. Whereas if you go west into the 450, 400 mil rainfall environments, really cropping is usually better, more volatile, extremely volatile, but the livestock carrying capacity drops off so quickly that livestock are actually hard to compete in that environment. So we like the more eastern areas, and that means we can have a true mixed farm. Yes. In that we can have roughly half and half sheep to cropping. And the reason we don't have many cattle is that we can't make the numbers work. They're just not as profitable. Really what we want to then do is identify the best value farm we can for them. You've got two levels of production to look at. One is what's it doing now? So how productive is it now? But the second really important part of that is what's it going to do in the future? And we often will look at farms and see that we can get 30, 40% productivity gain over a number of years. Probably more so in livestock, because livestock tend to be more scope for that. But also we can see it in cropping with better rotations and loosening the system and things which are no rocket science. The first thing we sit down and do is a plan that takes out usually 5 years, and so that gives us a picture of what the business is going to look like over the long term. It's not precise because we know it's going to vary, but at least you can get a sense of where you're going and where you want to go. And then as things don't pan out the way you expect, you can at least see the implications against your plan. Most of our investors are around for the long term, so they want to know what the business is going to perform long term, but they want to know the upside and the downside. And all those decisions about where we put our working capital on a farm are really important, because you've got a whole heap of choices. And so you can look at on-farm storage, you can look at plant and equipment, you can look at livestock and improved genetics and laneways, all those sort of things. And basically what we do is go through and say, well, which are the most important? Takes, $100 a hectare out of your overheads if you avoid that plant and machinery ownership. People are really important, obviously, in making it happen. You can buy the best farm, but if you don't have good staff, it's just a disaster. The benefits of mixed farming are huge, and basically the key thing is the complementarity between the enterprises. The fact that you can graze winter wheats, you can use lucerne for nitrogen supply, and you've got weed control options. There's those synergies which are large, and they're hard to quantify, but they are real and they're substantial. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about risk. You can sort of move a little bit more toward cropping or a bit more to livestock. You can go 60-40, 50-50 without too much drama. Now, we're not a big advocate of doing that, because when you make the decision to do it, by the time you actually reap the reward, often the prices have changed to something different. So we tend to choose an optimum system and stick with that over the long term, unless there is a very good reason to change. But also the livestock or the sheep enterprise and the cropping enterprise have different risk profiles. The sheep are a stabiliser in the system, and that's really important. And in times of low prices and tough years, you'll still usually get something out of your sheep, or you'll break even. Your cropping, you're just ripping up cash. I think the challenge for the farmers is to ensure that productivity goes up, not just production, so that if you're producing more, you're actually making more. Because over time, the cropping side has done very, very well with 2 to 3% per annum gains in productivity. And the sheep sector, particularly the wool sector, has some real challenges. Productivity gains are mostly incremental. So what we've got to do is keep focusing on the incremental ones, the 1 or 2% here and there, making sure our genetic gain is good, making sure that we're up to date with with cultivars in crops. And what we tend to be is not on the first wave of new technology. We're not the first one out there with a new idea, experimenting with it, fiddling around with it. And so we'll tend to come along on the second wave once it's proven up and once the risk is taken out of it and once people can see that, yeah, that actually does work and it fits into a mixed farming system. Because the real challenge often in mixed systems is to actually think it all through and say, well, how does it affect my livestock side of things, and how does it affect my cropping side of things, and what happens when I put it back together? All those sort of things are really important.